earthly tents and heavenly buildings. A deep dive into 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 1 through 10. What Paul, beaten, shipwrecked, and left for dead, discovered about the body you're living in right now, and the one that's already waiting for you. Paul didn't write this from a library. He wrote it on the road, exhausted, scarred, hunted. By the time he penned 2 Corinthians, he'd been beaten with rods 3 times, shipwrecked 3 times, stoned and left for dead outside the walls of Lystra. Think about that for a moment. This isn't a theologian in a tower. This is a man whose body was falling apart and he knew it. He just told the Corinthians in chapter 4, though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. He could feel the wasting, every scar, every limp, every morning that hurt more than the one before. And now in chapter 5, he does something remarkable. He doesn't complain. He doesn't spiral into despair. He pulls out a metaphor, one that would have landed like a hammer for his audience. He says your body is a tent. Paul wasn't being poetic. He was a tent maker by trade. Every tent he ever stitched eventually wore out. Canvas frays, poles snap, stakes pull loose. He'd watched it happen hundreds of times. And he looked at his own body, broken, aching, wearing thin, and said, "That's exactly what this is, a tent." A tent is temporary. You don't build a foundation for it. You don't pour concrete. You drive a few stakes in the ground, stretch some fabric over poles, and you know, from the very moment you set it up, that someday you're going to take it down. That's your body. It doesn't matter how strong you are right now. It doesn't matter how well you eat, how hard you train, how carefully you take care of yourself. Your body is a tent. It was never meant to last forever. And if you're honest, you already know this. You felt the first fraying of the canvas, the knee that didn't used to ache, the back that takes a little longer to loosen up, the energy that drops off earlier than it did 10 years ago. Paul isn't being morbid here. He's being real. And that's why what he says next matters so much, because he doesn't stop at the tent. He points to something else entirely. Listen to what Paul says in verse 1. For we know that if the tent that is our earthly home is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. A building, not another tent, not a newer model. A building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Paul draws the sharpest contrast he can. A tent is temporary. A building is permanent. A tent is fragile. A building is unshakable. A tent you put up yourself. A building from God, he constructed it. And notice that word "know." Paul doesn't say we hope. He doesn't say we think it'll work out. He says we know. This isn't wishful thinking. This is bedrock certainty. The body you have right now, it's a tent. It's wearing out even as we speak. But what God has prepared for you, that's a building, eternal, indestructible, already waiting in the heavens. You're not losing something. You're heading towards something far greater. Now Paul introduces an idea that most men never talk about, groaning. Verse 2 says, "In this tent we groan, longing to put on our heavenly dwelling." Groaning, that's an honest word. It's the sound you make when the weight is real but you can't quite put it into words. When something deep inside you aches for more than what this life is giving you. Have you felt that? Sitting in traffic, grinding through another Monday, watching the news and feeling the weight of a broken world, and something inside you whispers, "This isn't it. This can't be all there is." Paul says that feeling is real, and it's not weakness. It's not depression. It's not something to medicate away. It's homesickness. It's your soul recognizing that you were built for something bigger than what a tent can hold. But here's the key. Paul is very specific about what this groaning is, and what it isn't. Paul puts it plainly, "For in this tent we groan, longing to put on our heavenly dwelling." Verse 4 makes a critical distinction. Paul groans, not that we would be unclothed, but that we would be further clothed, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. This is not escapism. Paul isn't saying, I can't take it anymore, just get me out of here. That's despair. That's checking out. Paul isn't running from something, he's running toward something. He doesn't want to be stripped down. He wants to be further clothed. He wants more life, not less. He wants the mortal parts of him, the pain, the limitation, the fraying canvas, to be swallowed up, not by death, by life. That distinction matters. The world tells you to escape your pain, numb it, distract yourself. The gospel says something better is coming to overwhelm it entirely. Your groaning isn't a sign of defeat. It's a sign that you're paying attention. And in case you're wondering whether this is just nice theology with no teeth, verse 5 drops the guarantee. He who has prepared us for this very thing is God, who has given us the Spirit as a guarantee. God doesn't just promise you the building. He gives you a down payment right now. The Holy Spirit living in you today is the proof that the rest of it is coming. Think of it like earnest money on a house. When a buyer puts down earnest money, they're saying, I'm committed. This deal is going through. God has put His Spirit in you as His earnest money. He's not backing out. The building is already yours. The deposit has already been paid. Here's the promise. He who has prepared us for this very thing is God, who has given us the Spirit as a guarantee. Now Paul shifts gears. He's laid the theological foundation, tent, building, groaning, guarantee. And in verses 6 through 10, he draws out 4 motivations for how to actually live in light of everything he's just said. The first motivation is courage. Verse 6, so we are always of good courage. Always, not just when things go your way, not just when life makes sense. Always. And look at why. We know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. Paul's courage doesn't come from his circumstances. The man was beaten and broke. His courage comes from his destination. When you know where you're headed, you can handle where you are. A soldier in a foxhole fights differently when he knows the orders to go home are already signed. Paul's courage is anchored in a future that's already been guaranteed. The second motivation is promise. Verse 8, yes, we are of good courage, and we would rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. That's Paul's honest preference. Given the choice, stay in the tent or go home to the building, he picks home. Not because he hates his life, not because he's given up, but because he loves Christ more than anything this world has to offer. That's a gut check for every man watching this. If someone handed you the keys to the life you've always wanted, the career, the house, the perfect health, would you still choose Christ over all of it? Paul would, because he'd walked with Christ long enough to know nothing this world offers comes close. The third motivation is purpose. Verse 9, so whether we are at home or away, we make it our aim to please Him. Notice what Paul does here. He doesn't say, well, since heaven's guaranteed, I guess I'll just coast until I get there. He says the exact opposite. Whether I'm still in the body or already with the Lord, either way, my aim is to please Him. That word aim in the Greek is philotimomai. It means to make something your ambition, your driving goal, the thing you organize your entire life around. You're not just waiting for the building. You're living right now for the builder. Every decision, every relationship, every dollar spent, every hour given, aimed at one target, pleasing Him. The fourth motivation is accountability, and this one carries weight. Verse 10, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive what is due for what he has done in the body, whether good or evil. Now, this isn't about salvation. If you belong to Christ, that question is settled. This is about stewardship. What did you do with the tent while you had it? The judgment seat, the bema seat in Greek, was the platform where athletes in the ancient games received their crowns. Paul is saying, you will stand before Christ and give an account, not to earn your place in heaven, but because what you did with this temporary life. matters for eternity. How you live in the tent echoes in the building. And right in the middle of it all, verse 7, the verse that holds everything together. For we walk by faith, not by sight. That's the thread running through everything Paul says here. The tent is what you see. The building is what you believe. The groaning is what you feel. And faith is what carries you from one to the other. You're not home yet, and that's not a tragedy, that's a mission briefing. You've got a tent, it's wearing out. You've got a building, it's already yours. You've got the Spirit inside you, He's the guarantee, and you've got a purpose to please the one who made both the tent and the building. So what do you do with that? You live with courage because you know exactly where you're headed. You hold to the promise that home with Christ is better than anything on this earth. You aim at His glory in every decision, every conversation, every quiet moment when no one else is watching. And you remember the accountability because the tent life is not a rehearsal. It's the real thing, and you're not home yet.